I'm Carl Azus, and I'm here to help get you up to speed on what's going on in the world. Today, we start with a spotlight on China, a communist nation that's quickly and extensively limiting the rights of private citizens and businesses. This is a change for the Asian country. Experts say that while the government strictly limited people's speech, actions, and even clothing in the 1960s and 70s, Chinese leaders have taken a more hands-off approach to private life in more recent decades. Citizens have been allowed to have more economic and social freedoms, while the government kept strict control over politics. But now, analysts say the Communist Party is working to tighten its grip on private life as well. For businesses, this means China will have more regulations on how private companies operate and what wealthy people are allowed to do. For young people, it means less time gaming. Last Wednesday, we reported on how the Chinese government banned online gaming during the week for people younger than 18 and limited it to 1 hour on each weekend day. Other rules include new limits on what kinds of after-school programs students are allowed to take and how celebrities are allowed to behave and dress. Analysts say the government wants to prevent China's youth from being influenced by Western values. It wants children to share the Communist Party's values. And because that party ultimately controls the nation's politics, its media, and its economy, it can enact these reforms whenever it feels like they're needed.
China's ruling Communist Party, having just celebrated its 100th birthday, is implementing a series of drastic policies, upending everything from multi-billion-dollar businesses to pop culture. Socialism with Chinese characteristics, as it's called here, the party's returning to its self-acclaimed motto of serving the people, led by an increasingly powerful Xi Jinping.
He really wants a disciplined regime, a disciplined people, all dedicated to the party in many ways and in making China strong.
And it means weakening some of the country's biggest tycoons. In recent months, Beijing has targeted some of China's most successful companies, imposing harsh regulations and fines on ride-hailing company Didi and tech giants Alibaba and Tencent. It's coincided with restrictions on materialism and the flaunting of luxurious living. President Xi's gone a step further, calling for a redistribution of wealth to close a widening income gap. The crackdown has also extended to Chinese celebrities, those accused of tax evasion or simply being unpatriotic, and sometimes even without explanations, not only canceled, but also erased from Chinese social media and online streaming platforms.
You can't get too high, you can't get too famous, and you can't get too wealthy.
Some are calling it a new cultural revolution, harking back to the 60s and 70s when then-communist leader Mao Zedong led a movement to purify the party, as he put it, but many say an obvious effort to reassert his control in a power struggle. It led to brutal crackdowns on free thought, mass imprisonments, and death. Though in today's China, there is no question who's in charge. And it's spread into China's already heavily patrolled cyberspace, profiles and past posts deleted. These policies to purify the internet and preserve party control, seeming to target any person, company, or group with suspected foreign influence, most especially from the United States. China is also challenging the U.S. for full control over strategic supplies, from electronic chips to solar panels to vaccines. It wants access to these key items unimpeded by Western nations, and eventually to become self-sufficient. Meantime, some are tapping into China's rising nationalism, winning favor by promoting patriotism, morality, and, more than anything else, the Communist Party ideology. Starting with children as young as 6 years old, with the recent introduction of a new mandatory academic subject, Xi Jinping thought. The Chinese president already eliminated term limits in 2018, opening the door for him to rule for life. As for the companies that are feeling growing squeeze from Beijing, they're suddenly paying it forward in a very public way, pledging to donate billions of dollars to further Xi's social causes. Whether voluntary or compelled, it seems they've gotten the party's message. In China, there is only one boss who really counts. David Cover, CNN, Shanghai.
10-second trivia. Which of these U.S. government agencies was created in 1947? Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Homeland Security, National Security Agency, or Central Intelligence Agency? The CIA was created in 1947. It developed out of the Office of Strategic Services, which operated during World War II. This Saturday will mark exactly 20 years since the September 11th terrorist attacks on the United States. It was the deadliest foreign assault on American soil, and tomorrow we'll have full coverage in remembrance of the events that changed the nation. The 9/11 Memorial Museum in New York City has tens of thousands of artifacts that tell the story of the attacks. But there's another museum related to September 11th that most people will never be allowed to see, at least in person. It's at the headquarters of the Central Intelligence Agency in Langley, Virginia, and its artifacts range from relics of the attacks themselves to pieces related to the Al-Qaeda terrorist leader who planned the assault.
While time has marched forward, many items left behind on September 11th, 2001 stay just as they were that Tuesday, now behind glass, playing their role in a now 20-year-old promise to never forget.
That gym bag belongs to the youngest passenger on Flight 93. She was actually on her way back to college that day.
Artifacts of the day when 2,977 people died are on wide public display in museums across the country to make the past more tangible in the present. Other iconic items from the last 20 years have a smaller audience and specific purpose.
Using the artifacts here at CIA Museum, we can tell the story of our accomplishments, what we've done with our history, and show them the different missions that have happened and help them understand what they can do in the future.
The CIA Museum is the rare museum that doesn't open to the public. It's tucked deep inside agency headquarters in Langley, Virginia, down famous corridors most Americans only see in the movies, unless, like museum director Robert Beyer, you work here.
This isn't just history for history's sake. We want our officers to look at these artifacts and then maybe come up with a new idea for a mission that's happening today.
The collection goes back to the CIA's pre-World War II intelligence predecessor, the Office of Strategic Services. Up front, the most vivid history. Just 2 weeks after 9/11-2001, the CIA sent its first team into Afghanistan to hunt for Osama bin Laden. By late 2010, they'd zeroed in on a compound in Abbottabad in northern Pakistan. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency built scale models like this one to brief Navy SEALs preparing to carry out the raid and President Obama.
It had a terrace, but it also had a 6-foot wall so no one could see in. Seeing this up close for the president, it helps them understand something more than just a photograph.
Also here, one of 13 bricks collected from the compound and the rifle found next to bin Laden when he was killed on May 2nd, 2011.
Having that artifact here at headquarters really highlights that hunt for Osama bin Laden and finally finding him and bringing him to justice.
Not all of the thousands of items in the museum's collection are as notable as bin Laden's rifle, or this helicopter that flew that first post-9/11 CIA team into Afghanistan, which also sits on campus. But they're all displayed here for officers to remember what's come before them and how they might shape what's next. In Langley, Virginia, I'm Karen Kafa.
Though some people in Australia say they've sighted a Tasmanian tiger in recent years, scientists say the animal went extinct 85 years ago, and this is the last known footage ever taken of one. The film was shot at an Australian zoo in 1933, which was 3 years before the last captive Tasmanian tiger died. The footage was recently colorized in a process that took over 200 hours, and it was released to coincide with Australia's National Threatened Species Day. You can see how the allure of its lure can lure a plurality of people to keep a close lookout and try to lurkate any lurking living tigers in the unlikely event of capturing a lurky colorized colures of their own. I'm Carl Azus, and that's all I got for CNN 10. From Fredericksburg, Virginia, we heard from James Monroe High School on our YouTube channel. That is the only place we look for the schools we shout out.